Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the statement from Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, noting that Boris Johnson doesn't seem to be keen on the real Canada deal. That is, perhaps because the UK simply hasn't got the capacity to deal with renewing so many trade arrangements. Who'd have thought it? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, of course, whenever you hear about Canada deal in relation to Brexit, you inevitably think of not actually the Canada deal, but the Canada style deal that Boris Johnson claims to want from the EU. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth. There are many features of the EU's deal with Canada that Boris Johnson and his merry band of Brexiteers have ruled out. So he doesn't want a Canada-style deal after all. What he actually wants is a phrase for political purposes to refer to that sounds like a real thing, because, well, yeah, Canada have got arrangements with the EU. We just want that, don't we? Something that he can, that sounds real that he can't get, so that he can use it to say, well, it's the EU just being mean, really. They'll give it to Canada, why not us? Oh, not respecting our sovereignty, are they? But there is an actual Canada deal on offer, at any rate, and it's the one that Canada, funnily enough, have said that they're happy to extend to the UK for our post-Brexit trading consideration. It's nothing fancy. It's like every other trade agreement that we've got carrying on. Canada have said some time ago they're not interested in negotiating anything really different. And let's be honest, the UK would be foolish to prioritise negotiating, a very different trade deal with Canada right now. Anyway, we don't trade that much with them compared to, say, the whole of the EU or the United States, and indeed a number of others. But they did say anyway, well, talk to us when you've got your deal sorted out with the EU. But like a number of countries, they are happy for a sort of continuity agreement that works much the same way as trade between our countries do right now, just in the interest of not causing any problems for their own businesses. Only according to Trudeau, the UK seems to be struggling a little bit to complete this. He says we don't have the bandwidth, and this is certainly true and obvious, and I don't mean that for once. I don't mean that as a criticism of our brainless Brexit government, because, think about it. The Brexit transition period agreement aside, the EU's got 38 free trade agreements with another 54 waiting to be implemented. Either they've been agreed in principle, not yet implemented, or they've not quite been signed off yet, so it's in advanced stages. And that's just preferential trade agreements. If you consider all the agreements that they have around the world for everything, there are hundreds. It's like 750. So far, the UK has had just over 9 months outside of EU membership, and we've concluded one significant deal with Japan. It's the only one that's actually sort of newish. And even that's not entirely new, because it's just, in terms of our, quotas, it's just picking up the scraps from the EU. So we don't have our own quotas with Japan. It's like, if the EU don't use all of theirs, we can have what's left over. And even that was rushed. It was rushed so that we could conclude a free trade agreement with someone. Boris Johnson wanted it to be the United States. That wasn't happening. I don't know whether or not he wanted it to be with the EU, in all honesty, but he needed it with someone. Those involved have been complaining that the deal is 83% in favour of Japan and only 17% in favour of the UK. The government's own figures that they're quite happy to throw out there shows a marginal improvement on no free trade agreement with Japan at all. But interestingly, they don't want to compare it to the free trade agreement that we had as members of the EU, and we still have for 7 more weeks. That's interesting, isn't it? But it doesn't take a lot of working out. If it's a marginal improvement on not having a free trade agreement, then clearly it's going to be less than having a free trade agreement via the EU. So it's a worse deal than we had as members of the EU, but it is still a deal. It's still a deal. We also have a few continuity agreements with other countries as well. A lot of them were organised by Liam Fox while we were still members of the EU. A few others by Liz Truss since. and it covers about 10% of our total trade. So we've got formal agreements covering about 10% of our formal trade. For the rest, we're moving on to World Trade Organization terms, if we don't get a move on anyway. As I say, there are a few things in the pipeline, including Canada, but they're not really going anywhere just yet. And, you know, if you think about what Brexit supporters expected to happen, so they expected the UK to be able to magically negotiate trade deals that had taken the EU decades to carry out. They expected us to improve upon them, and they expected us to do it quickly. Now, why did they expect this? Because they were told to expect this. Conservative Brexiteers told them that we'd have all of the trade arrangements in place the day we left. It's yet another thing. In fact, I'm now struggling to think of anything that they promised in the 2016 Brexit referendum, even a single thing that's actually happened or is going to happen. How many of their promises are they still sticking by? Because I count 0. And all we're talking about for a lot of these is a copy and pasted EU deal. I mean, that doesn't really count as a negotiated deal. Yeah, there's a little bit of talking about the finer points, but it's effectively copying and pasting what we have now. But even that takes some admin. You know, this is why we don't yet have a carryover deal with Canada. It's not that Canada are dismissing it; they're quite happy about it. In fact, like, technically, they'd be delighted with it. The value of Canadian exports to the UK is greater than the value of UK exports to Canada, for example. But it's not that just because the balance of trade is that way doesn't mean that the UK don't want it either. Remember, there are still British businesses who will consider a free trade or a nearly free trade agreement with Canada. The carryover deal that we have with the EU, which is mostly free trade. You know, there are businesses in this country that will consider that the most important thing to have in place because it's what affects their business. But as Trudeau points out, you know, we don't have the capacity to deal with so many trade talks and agreements at once. And like I said, that's not a criticism of the government. I'm not criticising the government for that because no country would. Even the EU and the USA, absolute behemoths in the trade world, and they can focus on quite a lot at once. They've got talks going with lots of countries at once, lots of trading blocks, but they couldn't carry out the sheer number that we need to, which is the whole world, you know, at once. And Trudeau also pointed out that the UK hasn't actually negotiated trade deals itself for decades. You know, I would say that it showed with the Japanese trade deal being so heavily in favour of Japan. I mean, that just shows you how, you know, how much lack of match fitness we have. But I don't think that is actually evidence of that, because we can imagine that Japan would always have come out on top with such talks, but in fairness, our negotiators were never actually given a chance to try and get a good deal with Japan, because government pressure was on them to get one this year. They shouldn't have done. They should have said it'll take as long as it takes to get the deal we need. But no, such was the urgency of getting a deal this year, so that at the end of this year, Boris Johnson didn't have arseholes like me going, where's all these trade deals then? I'm still going to say it at the end of the year because there's one. You know, but they wanted at least one deal, so they folded on everything that Japan wanted so that the government could say we had a post-Brexit trade deal. They knew that they could say it was a better trade deal than one we had with the EU. They have said that. We knew that they would say that. Johnson really wanted the US trade deal, of course, but you know that wasn't going terribly well. And now the prospects of a US trade deal has all the grace and purpose of a lead balloon. Naturally, Liz Truss, who, as I say, is the cabinet minister who now deals with most of these, with the what you might call smaller agreements. That's not, you know, to be offensive, but the big one is the EU that Michael Gove is in charge of. She denied this charge that the UK doesn't have the bandwidth and boasted, we've got over 700 staff working on. Actually, she said 700 staff working on them. I think it might be a little over. But that raises a question, a statement immediately in my mind. The question is, okay, so you're saying we do have the capacity for all this. Okay, great. Why haven't we sorted them out then? Why have we not got them? Especially when what we're talking about is essentially copied agreements. Very little negotiating to be done. just smoothing out the edges, copied agreement along the same lines that we already have. No need for any implementation because it's basically the same. Like I said, this isn't like Japan where each side was trying to get something new. This is just a copy-paste job and we still don't have it done. And then the statement is to note that if she's got 700 staff on this, okay, that's still fewer than one member of staff per agreement that the EU have around the world. And we don't have that many more of them. So when you actually tick off the ones we do now have, you're probably talking one member of staff per agreement that we need to now replicate or at least get our own version of. That's not enough. You know, we're about to lose a hell of a lot of agreements in 7 weeks' time. The EU, as I said, has 750 agreements around the world on various things, not just trade, that we would at least like to replicate. And it's not just about free trade agreements. Even separate bilateral agreements are still important for people in the UK. The cumulative effect can be quite large. At the moment, we have almost completely tariff-free trade with Canada. This will not be the case in 2 months' time unless Liz Truss sorts it out. And let's say she does. Let's say she prioritises that. If she prioritises that, then that means she moves something else down in the priority list. Something else falls by the wayside. Maybe Singapore or Mexico. There are a number of countries in the same position. If we did have the bandwidth, as Truss insists, why haven't these agreements been sorted? Why has she basically just got Japan? Japan, that's it. Where's the rest? And once we've left the transition period, the remaining agreements that we'll be pursuing, which is almost all of them, in terms of numbers as well as in terms of value, will be much more difficult because we will have to accept even worse terms than the Japanese trade deal because our base position will not be EU transition period conditions, which is basically EU conditions. It'll be the harsh WTO conditions. And although I knew it would be ridiculous to suppose that we could negotiate the genuinely new and improved trade deals outside the EU, that was just for Brexiteers. No one else believed that. I did at least expect them to carry over trading agreements with our most important trading partners. Because in the grand scheme of things, yeah, Canada alone is not of standout importance on the overall UK economy. But when you consider all of the countries where we're struggling to sign carryover agreements, it all adds up to a significant portion. And as I say, every single one of them is going to put British jobs on the line if it's not sorted. At a time when we've already got rising unemployment. So it's not like people who lose those jobs get another one in a growing industry, because where is it? Of course, not all trade talks are as important as those with the EU and the US, but we are giving the strongest possible impression that we do not understand what not having an agreement with the EU really means, because it doesn't look like we're going to get one of those. So we need to learn that lesson the hard way. In addition, Boris Johnson has also played an absolute blinder in making a US trade deal under his leadership fairly impossible without the mother of all climb downs. So why we haven't at least signed the agreements where the terms are mutually agreeable is absolutely beyond me, genuinely. Oh wait, no it's not. It's because we have a government that doesn't even listen to anyone who knows what they're talking about. We have a government who spent their Brexit preparation years telling experts to listen to them instead of them listening to experts. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.